Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If you love captivating stories about men transforming into women in unique and fascinating ways, then be sure to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Now, let's jump right into today's tale.
Epilogue 2 years later. The statuette of Aphrodite watched from its place of honor on the living room mantel, her marble smile as enigmatic as ever. In the morning light, the goddess's curves seemed to glow with an inner warmth, almost as if she were still actively working her magic, still pleased with her handiwork. The apartment was filled with sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, the faint smell of coffee mingling with the sweetness of maple syrup, and the sound of laughter. Elle's laughter, bright and unguarded, musical in a way that still occasionally surprised her when she heard recordings of herself. Elle stood barefoot in the kitchen, her toes painted a flirty coral that matched her fingernails, stirring pancake batter with one hand and flicking flour at Jake with the other. Her hair was longer now, cascading well past her shoulders in a wild halo of chestnut waves with natural highlights that caught the sunlight. The transformation that had begun with Aphrodite's influence had continued to refine itself over the past 2 years, her features even more delicate, more perfectly feminine, as if her body had been determining the ideal version of itself all along. Her figure had settled into lush, womanly proportions that turned heads whenever she entered a room. Her waist remained dramatically narrow, emphasizing the feminine flair of her hips and the perfect roundness of her backside. Her breasts, initially modest, had filled out to a full C-cup that balanced perfectly with her frame. Every trace of masculine angularity had long since vanished from her face, replaced by high cheekbones, a delicate jaw, full lips that needed no enhancement, and eyes framed by naturally thick lashes that made mascara almost redundant. She wore Jake's old MIT t-shirt, which hung off one shoulder in a way that always made him lose his train of thought, especially since she wore nothing but a pair of lacy boy shorts beneath it. The shirt that had once fit Elliot perfectly now swam on Elle's much smaller frame, the neckline constantly slipping to reveal a tantalizing glimpse of collarbone, shoulder, and the upper swell of her breast. "You're doing that on purpose," Jake accused, his eyes tracking the movement of the shirt as it slipped further down her arm. Elle batted her eyelashes innocently. "Doing what?" "That thing with the shirt," he said, gesturing with the spatula he was wielding. "The hole, oops, it's falling off my shoulder again, but I'm too busy making pancakes to notice how much skin I'm showing, routine." "Is it working?" she asked with a sly smile, deliberately stretching to reach a mixing bowl on a high shelf, causing the hem of the shirt to ride up and expose a stretch of smooth thigh. "Like a charm," Jake admitted, momentarily distracted from his pancake duties. Jake, for his part, was wielding the spatula with the deadly seriousness of a man determined to impress his fiancée, though his focus kept wavering whenever Elle moved in a way that made the oversized shirt shift revealingly. His hair was tousled from sleep and other morning activities, his expression a mix of concentration and barely contained desire as he watched her move around the kitchen. "Eyes on the pancakes, Turner," Elle admonished, though she made no effort to adjust her shirt. "You've already burned 3. "Worth it," he muttered, returning his attention to the stove just in time to flip a pancake, miss the pan entirely, and catch it with a colorful curse that made Elle laugh even harder. "You're hopeless," she teased, sliding up behind him and wrapping her arms around his waist, pressing her now generous breasts against his back. Her body fit against his in a way that still amazed her sometimes, her softness molding perfectly to his hardness, her smaller frame enveloped by his larger one. "How did you survive before me?" "Takeout," he answered promptly. "Lots and lots of takeout, and the occasional pity meal from my mother." "That explains so much," Elle murmured, standing on tiptoe to rest her chin on his shoulder. Even with the extra height, she barely reached. Her transformation had taken nearly 4 inches from her former height, making her petite in comparison to Jake's 6-foot-plus frame. He grinned, turning to press a kiss to her forehead, one hand automatically finding her waist, a gesture that had become instinctive over the past 2 years. His large palm spanned nearly half her midsection, a reminder of how dramatically her proportions had changed. "You said breakfast in bed." "No one said it had to be edible, or on plates, or recognizable as food. Clearly, we have different definitions of breakfast, Elle replied, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on his chest. Mine involves actual sustenance. Yours apparently involves charcoal. What can I say? I get distracted easily. Jake's gaze dropped meaningfully to where the t-shirt had slipped again, revealing the curve of her shoulder and a hint of her bra strap. Especially when my fiancé insists on looking like that at 8 in the morning. Like what? Elle asked with mock innocence, though she knew exactly what she was doing. 2 years in this body had taught her precisely how to use it to drive Jake to distraction. I'm just making pancakes. You're making pancakes while looking edible enough to be breakfast yourself, Jake corrected, his hand sliding lower to cup her hip. It's very confusing for my poor male brain. Your poor male brain seems to manage just fine, Elle laughed, wiggling out of his grasp to rescue a pancake that was starting to smoke. Though your cooking skills remain questionable. You're lucky you're cute, he said, slapping her backside playfully as she passed. Otherwise, I'd be deeply offended by these attacks on my culinary reputation. What reputation? Elle snorted, flipping the pancake with considerably more skill than Jake had demonstrated. The reputation of the man who once tried to microwave an entire raw chicken because the recipe said, heat thoroughly. That was one time, Jake protested, and I maintain that the instructions were unclear. Elle pecked his lips, her body automatically melting against his for a brief moment. The diamond on her left hand caught the morning light as she adjusted the temperature on the stove, sparkling as she wiggled her fingers. She still glanced at it sometimes, as if to make sure it was real, the tangible proof that what had begun as magical transformation had evolved into something even more miraculous. A love that had always been there, just waiting for the right form to express itself. Jake noticed, as always, his powers of observation, while sometimes comically absent when it came to burning breakfast, were laser-focused when it came to Elle. Still getting used to it, he asked, nodding toward the ring. Elle smiled, holding up her hand to admire the way the diamond scattered rainbows across the kitchen ceiling. A little, but I like the way it feels. She twisted it gently, feeling the unfamiliar but pleasant weight. Though I'm still not sure about the whole name change thing. Elle Turner sounds like a yoga instructor who also sells essential oils on Instagram. As opposed to Elle Grant, which sounds like a high-end perfume, Jake quipped. Either way, you smell amazing. He buried his nose in her neck, inhaling deeply. Seriously, that's one of the weirdest parts of this whole thing. How do you always smell so good, even first thing in the morning? Magic, Elle said simply, tapping his nose with a flour-covered finger. The same magic that apparently makes you find me irresistible even when I'm covered in pancake batter. You could be covered in motor oil and I'd still find you irresistible, Jake assured her, pulling her closer despite her half-hearted protests about the pancakes. His voice dropped to a mock whisper, lips brushing her ear. You know, we could just skip breakfast and... She smacked his arm with the spatula, leaving a smear of batter on his t-shirt, but she was grinning. We have a fitting at noon. I refuse to let you distract me with your fiancé powers. The last time you distracted me, we were an hour late to dinner with your parents, and your mother gave me that look that said she knew exactly what we'd been doing. My mother loves you, Jake pointed out, making another grab for her waist. She's thrilled I'm finally settling down with, how did she put it? Someone who classes up the Turner name. Your mother is still getting used to the fact that the scruffy best friend you brought to Thanksgiving for years is now the woman you're marrying, Elle corrected, though there was no bitterness in her tone. Jake's family had been surprisingly accepting of the transformation, once they'd gotten past the initial shock. His mother had even taken Elle shopping for her wedding dress, an experience that had cemented their bond. Jake waggled his eyebrows suggestively, his hands finding the hem of the oversized t-shirt. Speaking of the wedding, have you decided what you're wearing under that dress? Because I've been having these very detailed fantasies involving white lace and garters. That's for me to know and you to find out, Elle teased, though her cheeks flushed at the heat in his gaze. 2 years later, and he still looked at her like she was the 8th wonder of the world. Though I may have made a few purchases you haven't seen yet. Jake groaned, his forehead dropping to her shoulder. You're the one who keeps buying lingerie, designed specifically to give me heart palpitations. Poor baby, Elle cooed, running her fingers through his hair. It must be so hard for you, having a fiancé who enjoys looking sexy for you. Such a burden. She kissed him again, slow and deep, savoring the taste of coffee and sugar and all the mornings they still had ahead. Her body responded to him instantly, a warmth blooming low in her belly, her breasts growing heavy and sensitive where they pressed against his chest. You complaining? Never, he murmured against her lips, hands sliding down to cup her backside, lifting her slightly so she had to stand on tiptoe. Life's a lot more fun with you in it, Elle Grant. She laughed, melting into him despite her earlier protests about getting distracted. Good, because you're stuck with me. The paperwork to return me would be a nightmare. Return you? Jake scoffed, lifting her fully now so her legs wrapped around his waist, the abandoned pancakes beginning to smoke behind them. Not a chance. You're a limited edition, one-of-a-kind, no returns accepted miracle. Elle wound her arms around his neck, the oversized t-shirt riding up to reveal smooth thighs that gripped his waist. You always did know how to sweet-talk a girl. Only this girl, Jake corrected, carrying her toward the bedroom, breakfast clearly forgotten. And I plan to keep sweet-talking her for at least the next 50 years. The pancakes, Elle protested weakly, though her body was already responding to his touch, to the familiar pressure of his hands on her thighs. Jake reached back without looking, switching off the stove with one hand while keeping her securely against him with the other. Crisis averted. Now, where were we? You were about to demonstrate these fiancé powers you keep mentioning, Elle reminded him, her new body humming with anticipation in a way that still amazed her. How quickly it responded to him, how deeply it could feel, how thoroughly it could be satisfied. Right, Jake grinned, kicking the bedroom door closed behind them. Let me refresh your memory. Love finds a way. Later, as they dressed for their wedding suit and dress fitting, Elle caught sight of the Aphrodite statuette glowing in the midday sun. The marble seemed almost translucent, the goddess's enigmatic smile more pronounced as light played across her perfect features. Elle paused, running her hands down the sides of her dress, still marveling at the curves that filled it so naturally now. Her body had settled completely into its feminine form, every cell rewritten, every movement instinctive. The initial strangeness had long since faded, replaced by a deep comfort that made it hard to remember what it had felt like to inhabit her previous form. Her reflection showed a woman in her prime, curves in all the right places, skin that glowed with health, features that combined delicacy with strength. Her hair, longer and more lustrous than ever, fell in soft waves down her back. Her face had continued to refine itself over the past 2 years, cheekbones higher, lips fuller, eyes more expressive. Even her hands had changed, becoming more elegant, with long fingers and oval nails that she now kept manicured in soft, feminine colors. Thanks, she whispered, just for the goddess, a smile tugging at her lips as she remembered the cascade of changes that had begun with that impulsive purchase. The loss of stubble, the softening of features, the redistribution of weight from angular male planes to feminine curves, the gradual but complete transformation of her most intimate anatomy, all of it orchestrated by the marble figure that now watched over their home like a benevolent guardian. Jake came up behind her, his reflection appearing beside hers in the mirror. He slipped his arms around her waist, his hands spanning her midsection, emphasizing how much smaller she was now. Where they had once been nearly the same height, she now had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Talking to your patron goddess again? He teased gently, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Just expressing gratitude, Elle replied, leaning back against him, enjoying the solid warmth of his chest against her back. It's not every day a random shopping trip changes your entire life. And mine, Jake added, his eyes meeting hers in the mirror. Though I like to think we would have figured it out eventually, with or without divine intervention. Oh, really? Elle turned in his arms, one eyebrow raised skeptically. You were perfectly content to date every blonde bartender in a 10-mile radius while complaining to your buddy Elliot about how none of them understood you. Maybe I just needed the right motivation to see what was right in front of me, Jake suggested, his hands finding their familiar place on her hips. Though I have to admit, the packaging upgrade certainly caught my attention. So shallow, Elle chided, though her smile took any sting from the words. Only interested in me for my body. Not true, Jake protested, his expression turning serious for a moment. I fell in love with you, the person inside. The body just made it easier to express that love in certain very specific and extremely enjoyable ways. Smooth recovery, Elle laughed, straightening his collar with practiced ease. Ready to go, future Mr. Grant, or should I start practicing Mrs. Turner? Jake's smile was brilliant, his eyes crinkling at the corners in the way that had always made her heart skip, even before the transformation. Ready to go, future Mrs. Turner, or future co-parent Turner Grant, or future Nobel Prize winner Grant Turner. Whatever name you choose, as long as you're choosing me along with it. Elle's chest tightened with emotion, a warmth that had nothing to do with magic and everything to do with the man before her. She rose on tiptoe, pressing a soft kiss to his lips. Always choosing you. That's the easiest choice I've ever made. Jake's expression softened, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. Ready to go make some magic. Elle turned, radiant in the sunlight streaming through the windows, her transformed body moving with natural grace as she gathered her purse. Let's go make some magic. Hand in hand, they stepped out into the world. Two best friends, two lovers, two halves of a story that no magic could ever undo. Her smaller hand nestled perfectly in his larger one, her steps naturally falling into rhythm with his longer stride, her body instinctively leaning into his strength. And on the mantel, Aphrodite's smile remained, patient, playful, and proud of her finest work yet. The end.